One of the greatest fears in the world is the fear of losing a child. The fear of sitting next to your child's bed and holding her hand and feeling her fevered head and just feeling so helpless, knowing there's nothing else you can do, and just praying and begging for your child to live. And that's what Jairus was doing when he heard that Jesus was in town. And even though he was distraught and overcome by grief and fear, there was a tiny flicker of flame in the heart of this synagogue ruler. You see, he was a synagogue ruler, so he was allied with the men who had rejected Jesus as the Messiah. He was allied with the ruling class that said that Jesus was a deceiver and that he was demon-possessed. Yet, even more than his political alliances and his religious affiliation, he was a father who was losing his only daughter. And he'd heard the stories about people who had been healed, and he knew that it was supposedly because Jesus was connected to demons, and it was supposedly all a deception, but he didn't have any other hope. And so he pulled himself away from his daughter's bedside, and he ran through the town. He hit the crowd and elbowed and pushed his way through and came in front of Jesus, and he didn't introduce himself. He didn't wait for the story to be done. He just fell on his knees and cried out in desperate fear, "Lord, my daughter is sick. Please come to my house. Put your hand on her and heal her." And in his desperation and in his just a tiny little bit of faith, Jairus had no idea that he was standing in direct contrast to a centurion who earlier had asked Jesus to heal one of his servants through a messenger. The centurion said, "I'm not worthy to come into your presence. Don't even come to my house. Just say the word and my servant will be healed." And Jesus didn't give this religious leader a religious talk. He heard the cry of an anguished father and said, "Show me where she is." And as they walked through the town, people were pushing and pulling, and the crowd just wasn't letting Jesus get there as fast as possible. And I almost imagine Jairus grabbing Jesus' cloak or his hand and pulling him through the crowd. And then some woman who's bleeding touches him, and Jesus is like, "Who touched me?" And then there's this chaos, and she comes out and she tells her story, and Jesus says, "Your faith has healed you." And this whole time, Jairus is just like stressing out right next to Jesus. Have you ever stressed out right next to Jesus? And he's like, "Jesus, come on. We don't have time. Okay, this lady can be healed later. My daughter could be dying. You have got to help me now. You have got to help me now and in the way that I want." You see, Jairus had faith, but he also was putting Jesus in this box of, you need to heal on my timetable, you need to heal in my manner, and you need to have the outcome needs to be what I want. And so many times, I'm the same way with God. But Jesus didn't burst the box. Jesus didn't say, "Hey, if you put me in a box, I will not respond to you." Jesus followed that tiny flicker of faith, and they go to the house, and everyone's crying and freaking out because the girl has died. And I imagine Jairus is just deflated. He's just like, if only I had run harder or pulled more, if only I had manipulated the situation more, then Jesus would have gotten here sooner and she would not have died. And now all hope is lost. And Jesus, who always responds to faith, no matter how big or small it is, kicks out all the mourners because their chaos and crying and going on is just going to destroy the little bit of faith that Jairus has. He kicks them out. He says she's not dead, she's asleep. Because you see, with Jesus, our biggest problems are so small. All he has to do is say a word and they're done. He says, "Death, that's asleep to me." And everyone laughs at him and ridicules him. And he sends them away. And he takes 3 disciples and mom and dad, and they go into the room. And just imagine the heartbreak and anguish of these 2 parents as their 12-year-old daughter. I mean, they've worked so hard. They've had her as a baby and a toddler, and somehow she got sick, and now she's gone forever. And Jesus says, "Little girl, get up." He talks to her as if she's alive. You see, Jesus sees us not as we are, but as we will be. He told Gideon, "You're a mighty warrior." And he told this dead girl, "Get up." He talked to her like she was alive. And then she woke up. Can you imagine just the emotions of Jairus and his wife, of the mom and the dad as their little girl blinked her eyes and sat up and looked into the smiling face of Jesus? And as they're hugging and laughing and crying, Jesus says, "Give her something to eat. She's hungry." Jesus is so cool. He doesn't beat up the religious leader for being a fake religious leader, for not having enough faith, for not knowing his Bible enough to know that this is the Messiah standing in front of him. He doesn't castigate him for the timing and the manner and his impatience. He just responds to faith. And he overcomes death. And then he says, "Give her something to eat." This story is such a powerful message of God's got this. Because it speaks to the deepest human fear. And it speaks to the littlest of human faith. And it says that it doesn't matter how big your fears are, how impossible your situation is, and how puny your faith is. God's got this. So if Jesus isn't answering your prayer fast enough, if he's not giving you the outcome you want, if he's not healing in the manner that you want or giving you the miracle that you want, just know he responds to faith always. And it might take him a while to get through the crowd, and he might heal people along his way, but at just the perfect time, when it looks like it is impossible, he will say, "Little girl, wake up." And just think, if Jairus had known the truth, that he was standing in the presence of God Almighty, that he was standing in the presence of a man who just had to say a word and his daughter would be healed, be alive, then he wouldn't have stressed out. He would have said, "Jesus, take your time. Heal that lady. Heal these people over here. It's going to be okay. I know it's going to be fine." He would have walked into the house and said, "Hey guys, stop crying. Jesus is here. He's going to take care of this. She's dead? Oh, that's okay. Jesus is here. God's got this." And he would have walked into the room and he would have held his wife and say, "Hey, stop crying. Jesus is here. He's going to fix it. It's going to be okay. God's got this." He would have had such a different emotional experience if he had realized who God was and had the attitude of faith of God's got this. Let's learn the lesson from Jairus. Let's take that attitude that God's got this. And it'll help us get through our storm. Jesus is coming back very soon. And one day he will speak to your problem and he will fix it. And you will know that he is your Messiah. You will know that God's got this. God bless.